Hey guys, Akio Murasaki here. Today we're going to be talking about Highguard. This is going to be a bit of a recap video, a bit of a post-mortem, and I'm going to go for a couple of articles from PC Gamer, surprisingly, which are decent, talking about Highguard and where things went wrong, what were the moods during game development, and also, basically everything. We're going to talk about all of this because I think it's very important to understand why exactly Highguard failed and whether similar failures can, and I really hope to, be avoided in the future. So let's first start with the charts. The charts are not looking good, unsurprisingly. So I was wrong originally. I thought that Highguard might actually survive by having, 9k or 10k players on average, 10k player peak daily. However, the game started with 97,000 here on January the 26th, and it bled very quickly within 24 hours. It bled to around, 10k, 12k players, and then kept on bleeding, and this is exactly something that I didn't necessarily predict. It bled to around 5k players, and now it keeps on bleeding all the way down, despite the fact that we have the weekend right now. It's bleeding down to around 2k players. I think someone reported like 1k players somewhere, I'm not exactly sure where, during this week, but I see that it's around 3k players, and which basically means that the game is over. And also the game is over because the studio behind Highguard, Wildlight Entertainment, is officially downsizing. It has fired most of its staff, including the lead creatives behind the project, and very likely the project itself is going to shut down very soon. That is of course not confirmed yet, but it's incredibly likely considering the studio has downsized so much. Now, originally I wanted to have a look at what one of the lead creators, one of the lead devs of the project, what he said specifically about the project during development and the initial feedback he got. But unfortunately, he deleted his entire Twitter account and all of the posts he made, which is sad. I wish I screenshotted them. They're gone, unfortunately. But there are these comments that people kept in some of the screenshots. So what he says is that everyone I knew who had any connection to the team, so we're talking about like the direct the direct relationship of the team to any other people, to the team or project, had the same sentiments. This is lightning in a bottle. I trust this team wholeheartedly. If there's one project nobody in the industry is worried will fail, it's yours. This has mainstream hit written all over it. Unfortunately, I would say mainstream failure. There's no way that this will flop. I could play this game all day. So we have this, people call this toxic positivity. I wouldn't really call this necessarily toxic positivity, but this is a certain atmosphere, a certain sentiment that's very common in the gaming industry. And this is exactly what these people in the gaming industry led to. Now, why this is really the case? Because the gaming industry has been, in the last, 10, 20 years, has been sliding, not very quickly, but steadily towards a bit of a minimum when it comes to certain thought processes, sentiments, also politics, the way to look at games, has been sliding into this kind of minimum where the only creatives that remained at AAA studios who would talk about projects were creatives that would constantly hype each other up. So it's not necessarily toxic positivity, because toxic positivity, there would be something fake about it. There would be something disingenuous. But it's not necessarily the case. What I believe is happening is that the industry itself has put itself in a position where these people just circle jerk, honestly circle jerk, and hype each other up. But they don't really understand what is the perspective of the average gamer on that project. And so we have back-to-back 2 articles from, actually 3, but we're going to focus on 2 articles from PC Gamer. We have this one here from Tyler Wilde, published 3 days ago. I know people are kind of dunking on this article, but this is mostly because they don't fundamentally read the article, which is kind of sad because Tyler here has a couple of decent points. So Highguard didn't flop, which is obviously not true. It did flop. But let's get into the details, which is kind of highlighted here. Most games are massive hits, but publishers, developers, and investors remain exceedingly hopeful that they'll be the exception. And so he goes for, not the entire article is not super important, but let's point out some details here. Cool new shooters of every variety release every year, and the default state for all of them, no matter how good they are or how much money was spent to develop them, is not millions of players. That is absolutely true. And here's some examples. We have Straftat, which I've honestly never heard of. Eco Point Nova, also never heard of. Mycopunk, did hear about this one. Enlisted, no. Fragpunk, did hear about that one as well. A lot of them, as you can see here, I think one of the outliers here is probably Fragpunk, that had an all-time peak of almost 114k players, but is now at around 10k players. There are other games like The First Descendant, for instance, which I think is hovering at like 5 to 10k players, even though it had 200k players at its peak and was kind of running really high for a couple of months, maybe even a year or so. But other games, there's a couple of other free-to-play shooters like Strinova that I've played religiously almost, that are hovering around like 3k to 5k players, and it is completely normal. Now, the thing that is being missed out in this article, but is being pointed out in the next article very blatantly, is that there was an assumption that this is going to be a success, and this is the same thing that the lead developer of the project said, which obviously was not going to happen. Just looking at the stats here and just looking at like the reality of the average game, especially in a genre like this hero shooter that's absolutely packed with different successful titles, the chances of getting something new that is going to be a surefire hit was very low. And so there's another article here, also published 3 days ago, from Andy Chalk. PC Gamer, interestingly, I just want to really stress this out. PC Gamer was one of the outlets that was hyping up Highguard at its release, and was blaming players for toxicity, blaming players for kind of downplaying the game and leading to its eventual failure. Now we have a change of tone from PC Gamer, and I just want to stress this out. We're not going to memory hold this. We're obviously going to remember how many of the gaming journalists, how many of the outlets were absolutely glazing the hell of Highguard and pretending like it's going to be the next successful game, the next Apex Legends. The chances of that, as I already said, were very, very slim. And I kind of like how this article here does point this out and does go over all of the details. Former lead technical artist Josh Sobel says false assumptions and rage bait were major contributors to Highguard's failure to connect with players. That is obviously not true, and I'm very glad that Andy here, Mr. Chalk here, is being honest about the situation and about, well, also his personal position here. But yeah, obviously, as I said, there are layoffs. But basically, since the game was glazed up, I'm going to say this straight away, by Geoff Keighley at the 2025 Game Awards, it was basically downhill, and that is absolutely true. Internal feedback on Highguard prior to its reveal was quite positive. He was getting glazed internally within the team and in his kind of like direct industry surroundings. And then obviously that, yeah, they've been like, blah, 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 this is not very important. What is important is kind of the comment here from the author of the article, from Andy Chalk. I said in my own immediate reaction to the trailer that Highguard's characters looks like they have all the personality of a space heater. And that's maybe a little harsh, but I stand by it. And so here's the thing. This is the exact same comments, I mean, metaphorically, almost exact same comments, that also Concord received. The characters in the reveal when the game was dropped had absolutely zero personality. All of the designs, well, in the case of Concord, were absolutely horribly mismatched, but these ones here were simply boring. And this is something that has to be absolutely said about Highguard. It's like, if you open up with a game that has boring characters and you put out a trailer and you let Geoff Keighley, bless his soul, glaze up the game, the expectations are going to be high, okay? And as Hyder Christen goes, that was on the mild side of things, yes. The hate started immediately. Hate. That is also true, okay? I do agree that there was a lot of kind of, well, actually literal kind of cyber hate, I would even say. That is absolutely true. There was a lot of dunking on the game. However, one thing has to be said. You're online. You're gonna be exposed to a lot of opinions from a lot of different peoples. A lot of different peoples as well. But one thing that these industry veterans and people in the industry need to understand, we are being lied to by game journalists all the time. You are being lied to by game journalists all the time. You're being told your game is going to be successful. You need to be honest about this. They laughed at me for being proud of the game, told me to get out the McDonald's application. See, I know the welcome home Peppa meme. And mocked me for listing having autism in my bio. This is going a little far, to be honest. But it's also a weird thing to do because, like, why would you put this in your ex bio? Like, save it for Blue Sky, maybe. I don't know. Which they seem to think was evidence the game would be woke trash. Yes and no. This is the current climate. And again, I really wish things were different. I really do. But until game journalists take accountability and stop lying and stop hyping up games, the trend will continue until morale improves. There's no way to know how Highguard would have fared if the pressure of the Game Awards trailer hadn't been placed upon it, so wrote, but it doesn't really matter because we never got the chance. That is not true. You did get the chance. This 97.2025k players. This was your chance. Geoff Keighley gave you guys a chance. You had the chance. You blew that chance. Or rather, you made a game that was simply not very good. And this is the reality of the situation. Like, what do you exactly expect? You're making a game that's simply not very good. And here's a bit of a post-mortem, someone with experience weighing in on this. If you're making a game like this and you are an indie studio and you have, how do you even have 100 employees? That's absolutely wild. That's way too many people working on a game project. No, that's insane. But if you're making a game, now they mentioned here, I think in this article, that the guy worked on the project for 2.5 years. I've heard 7 years. 7 years is far too long. I know this is the standard in the industry, but it's simply unrealistic for a massive team of, I don't know, like 20, 30, 50 people to be working on a game for 7 years. So many things change in 7 years. If you are aiming, and this is going to be true for a lot of other fields, if you are aiming for a genre that already has successful titles, and you're now at this very moment going to invest another 7 years, you will overshoot. You will miss the window because there is going to be a lot of other games coming in the genre and very likely being way more successful than you. And that was absolutely true. There were other studios working on similar games while I think Fortnite wasn't still in development, and they kind of launched after Fortnite. There's a lot of like Asian studios, for instance, in China or Korea, which are able to iterate way faster on projects and are able actually to deliver something within 3 years. And you guys are already so many years behind. So this is number one. Number two, the scope. Again, I'm going to be very honest here. If you are working on an indie title, you need to be super strict of what is the core of the game that you want to deliver. One of the main issues with Highguard was that the maps were absolutely massive, unnecessarily big, and you only had 8 characters and I think 4 or so maps. So you made 4 maps and 8 characters in 7 years. That is a little underwhelming, I'm going to be honest. And also, what were you thinking about? You put way too many game mechanics into the game. You've spent time working on all of these features, not even considering whether your game is going to land. And all of this costs both money and time. That should probably not surprise anyone, huh? But that's basically my 2 free cents here from someone who did work on, kind of projects, when I say here, and who has some experience with this. So again, this was very to be expected. But just to sum up here, we are now entering the Concordian timeline apparently. We have Concord in 2024, it failed. Now we are at Highguard, which failed for very similar reasons. What we are still anticipating in the Concordian timeline is, of course, Marathon. And let's see if Horizon Hunters Gathering is going to join the Concordian timeline. This is still not sure. Marathon, who knows? Maybe it's going to be successful. I wouldn't really bet on it though. But that's basically it from my side for this video. And I hope you guys enjoyed it and are looking forward to entering the Concordian timeline. See you guys. Mata ne!